Hi, I'm Trina. Welcome to my cucina. Today we are making homemade pasta. This is one thing I have been working on for a little bit now. Definitely not a master, but I want to help anybody else that might also be thinking about trying it. It's pretty easy to get started and it's really fun to start to build your mastery of homemade pasta. So let's make some pasta. First things first, the setup, equipment, and ingredients. This recipe that we're going to make today is the super simple recipe that came with my pasta maker machine in this little booklet here. I've looked online and seen a bunch of different recipes, but this one is pretty standard and pretty common. So it's essentially just flour and eggs, and that's it. It's a beautiful thing. So this recipe calls for 5 eggs, room temperature. So make sure, to plan a little bit ahead, get them set out, you should be good to go. Then flour-wise, so the first time I made it, I just used all-purpose flour, and you need 500 grams of flour. That's fine, it can work, but then the next time I made it, I did, I read a bunch of blogs, and I did go out and find, at Whole Foods here in the States, this 0000 flour. Again, Whole Foods, I was able to find it, and I think you can find it online as well. And a lot of recipes call for either entirely this 00 soft flour, and it's very soft, or a combination of 00 and semolina. And semolina I can find just at the regular grocery store, but essentially a mix of those. So the base recipe, again, 5 eggs and 500 grams of flour. Because I want this pasta that we're gonna make tonight just to be super silky, it doesn't need to have a lot of grip to it. I'm just gonna go with the nice, soft 00, entirely 500 grams 00. When I've made ravioli, I do about 250 of the 00, 250 of the semolina. You'll also need a little bit of extra flour for dusting and to help when you're rolling things out. Really, the enemy here will be stickiness, so have yourself a little dish of extra flour. Just if you're getting started out and you don't want to make a big investment, you can do this with a rolling pin and a knife. So if you're just getting started, I'll show you both. I'll show both the rolling pin and the roller. So after I made this the first time, I went and sprang for this Atlas, this Marcato Atlas 150 pasta machine, and it has a roller and a couple attachments on it for linguine and tagliolini. So I'll show you how to do both. We'll make a little bit of linguine, and we'll also make a little bit of just like a tagliatelle, a little bit of a wider noodle that we hand cut, make it a little rustico, a little rustic. You'll need some way to dry the pasta once you get it rolled and cut. You can put them into beautiful little nests, but you will need just a plethora of flour. The first time we did it, our tagliolini turned into a ball of tagliolini, so just copious amounts of flour. Otherwise, you can get one of these nifty little drying racks. This guy was like 15 bucks on Amazon, and the pasta looks extremely picturesque as it's hanging here drying. One other note is you will need some sort of saran wrap. So that will be pretty quickly here in a little bit. Some other little side notes. You're probably gonna want a hair tie, an apron, something. You're gonna need this dough, and you're gonna need it for a little while. So be ready to get a little warm, get a little workout with your pasta. But other than that, it's just so much fun to play with your food a little bit. So, without further ado, let's get our hands dirty. First things first, make sure your countertop is nice and clean. And then you're going to pour out your 500 grams of flour. Or if you mixed 250 of the 00 and the semolina, go ahead and pour them out. And you're gonna make your little mound here, and then you're gonna go ahead and put your fist in and make yourself a nice sized well, but give yourself some room on the walls. This point here is where you're gonna put your eggs, and you're gonna need a fork. Forgot to mention that. You're gonna need your fork. And so you're gonna need some space here to work around, put your eggs in, and you don't want the eggs to breach over the walls. So, and if you do, it's very, very fixable. All right, so let's get our eggs added in. A quick note about salt. So we do not put salt in this recipe. And as I've been doing my research, I've been finding that you actually shouldn't put salt into a pasta dough because it actually strengthens up the gluten strands and adds some toughness to it. So we put salt in the boiling water. So no salt here. All right, let's keep whipping. The name of the game here is to slowly incorporate the flour into the eggs using your fork. So just start to gradually add a little bit from each of the sides of the walls without putting a big enough hole in the wall to cause a space where the eggs can leak out. If they do leak out, just start to grab your hands, or if you have a dough scraper nearby, and just start to try to corral the eggs as best as you can in that moment. You got this. It can get fixed. Then start to knead. Incorporating a little bit more of the flour and okay, we've been kneading for I think about 10 minutes, but the dough ball has really started to smooth out, come together nicely. So kind of tighten it up into a nice little ball here. If you press on, it should have some nice spring back. And so we're gonna wrap this up super tight in saran wrap. The air protection is critical right now. And then we're gonna let it rest for 30 to 60 minutes. It's a school night, so we're probably gonna do about 30 minutes tonight. But yeah, you can see how this dough looks. And then you'll see we didn't end up using all 500 grams of flour, but hey, that's actually pretty common. So we'll get this guy wrapped and resting. Our pasta has been resting for 30 minutes. It's about as much time as I've got tonight. I've read that you can go like up to 60 minutes. I don't actually know what the difference is, but either way, we're gonna get rocking and rolling 30 minutes. All right, so now what we're gonna do is you can take a knife or a dough cutter, scraper. We're gonna cut our dough into 4 pieces. Why? Because if you tried to roll out this whole thing, it would be pretty difficult to work with. So we cut it into 4 pieces. These guys get covered back up. You want to avoid drying out. Just as much as you want to avoid things sticking, you want to avoid them drying out. So we're going to start with the rolled out non-pasta maker version here. So we're going to get this guy nice, flattened out a little bit, our little wedge here. And we're gonna start rolling. Okay, that was a fair amount of work, but it's very doable. It will be the only wedge that I do this way though. All right, so I've got my 2 pieces here. I just cut it in half to get a nicer length, and I'm just going to roll this guy a little bit this way. And then very simply, just going to cut them about the width of a tagliatelle. And the beauty of this is you can call it rustic pasta. So it doesn't have to be perfect. Perfect. And then I can attest to the fact that if you do goof a little bit and you got some weird little tiny pieces, which we'll have, your dog will probably like it. Just saying. All right, so then all you do now is just hang your beautiful little rustic pasta pieces up to dry. And it's okay if they're a little uneven. I mean, it's all gonna taste delicious. This is just part of learning and getting used to doing this for the first time. You'll start to feel the width of your pasta a little more naturally. And yeah, it's just kind of fun to make your own pasta, and it tastes darn good. All right, we'll let these guys dry, and I will do the same thing on the other side. Now let's do this the easier way, using the machine. So get out your next wedge. Mine are kind of sticking together. Cover them nice and tight. And then get out your machine. In this case, I have it set to 0. And kind of flatten it out just a little bit to get it towards the shape we're looking for. And then start to just crank it through. And the machine has a little clamp here. So if yours is moving around like mine was, you can always just tighten her up a little bit. So roll it through a couple times. If you're starting to see any stickage, flour, flour. So that was setting 0, now I'm gonna go to 1. Roll that through. Now I don't actually know if you're supposed to roll it through more than once each time, but no, it's kind of fun to keep doing it. Okay, we've got our second to last wedge, and we are gonna proceed again with the pasta maker. Set it back to 0 and do the same thing all over again. So. Okay, now we're ready to cut. So I've moved the little turny handle over to the cutter, dusted up some flour, and then just like the roller, I'm gonna get that guy going. See if it'll catch. There we go. And get your hands on some pasta. Ah, perfect. So then just make sure you separate them out and get them on the drying rack. If you have any tiny pieces, your dog might just happen to be nearby to enjoy them. I enable it, I absolutely know this. So yeah, we'll go ahead and do our last little bit this way, and then now I've got a good amount of tagliatelle tonight to eat with our bolognese sauce, and then we will have fettuccine. I think I said linguine at the top. It was this is a fettuccine attachment. So then we'll have plenty of fettuccine to have another night. You guys, these pastas can dry out pretty quickly, but you leave them out here, or put them in leave them out here for a little while. Then we put them in the fridge. And then if you know you're not gonna eat them, you can put them in the freezer and then just thaw them out. So yeah, we'll wrap up these guys, and I will start to boil my water here, which has an insane amount of salt, more than I ever thought I would be putting in water, but that's because we don't have any salt in the dough. So we have to put the salt in the water to make sure we're getting some of that flavor enhancement that we really need from the salt. Yeah, we'll top it with bolognese sauce tonight. Do you want some pasta? Is that pretty good? What you think?